What's up, everybody? It is finally here, the GOAT debates on the GOATcast podcast. I'm CW, joined here with my fellow debater, BigNige. What's going on, BigNige?
Not much. I'm ready to get into the debate and destroy CW first of many times, I hope.
Okay, this going to be his first L of the season, but he's a LeBron fan, so he don't mind losses. Anyway,
That's
so
crazy.
today
That's crazy.
we have a battle of the ideologies, thanks to Big Nige's help with that. Today we're going to discuss super teams, and for me, I'm defending that I don't believe super teams exist, and I will tell you why here soon. And Big Nige thinks they do exist. So what we're going to do is once we finish, we got two rounds. Let me explain the rules. Two rounds. We both have a round one, and then the last round we'll go back and forth. We're not going to split it up. We can both talk and try to, try to make a closed argument for what we think about super teams. So each round will be 5 minutes. So I'll have my timer right here, and once that notification goes off, we will have to come to a complete stop. Now, this is going to be a seasonal thing. I think we're going to do it throughout the summer, and we have some other guests that will be showing up to debate, and that will be coming up in the next coming weeks. So, player versus player will have different rules. Team versus team. So this one is just we're doing, like we said, ideology, something that is not we don't have to have a whole lot of stats and a whole lot of other things to really get our point across. So that's why ours is going to be a little structure, a little bit different than some of those. So be on the lookout for that. Now, usually we will flip a coin, or we'll let the debaters decide who can go first. But for this one, because of the way it's structured, I'm gonna go first, and Big Knives will follow up. Like I said, this round 5 minutes, but you can ask questions. Whatever question is asked, just stick to answering that question. No rebuttals, no none of that. Just answer the question asked, and we'll move on because that'll eat up your 5 minutes. We only got 5 minutes to try to make a claim. Uh, so try to keep your answer tight and to the point. So with that said, we're going to enter round one, and I'm going to start the 5 minute timer right now, and we're going to jump right into it. All right. So, super teams don't exist. I've said it, and I mean it. And before we get started too far, I'm going to ask you, what is your definition of super teams or a super team?
So, by my definition, super teams in the NBA are squads with at least three superstars joining forces to win an NBA title.
Okay. Three superstars, did you say? You said superstars, right?
Yes.
Okay. Can you define what a superstar is?
Loosely, my definition, if you are an MVP caliber player or at least one of the top people in your position, I'd say at least one of the five best in your position, and arguably can make a case to being the best, given your performance.
Okay, fair enough. Now, in this day and age, we all use ChatGPT. So I asked ChatGPT, what was a super team? And it said, it's kind of close to what you said. It says, a super team is generally defined as a roster with multiple all-star caliber players, often MVP candidates or all NBA level talent, all playing on the same team, typically in their primes or close to it. Okay, so with that said, my first time hearing super team was in 08, 07, 08 when the Boston Celtics famously traded for or signed Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen. But there's caveats to that. They were a little bit older, but they fit. You would agree that they fit that description, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Um, so with that, I'm going to go through some teams that ChatGPT says are super teams and try to debunk that, even though I have very little time. So we should have maybe done the 7 minutes because my time is slipping quickly. They say the 60 Celtics with Bill Russell, Bob Cousy, Sam Jones, those guys. The 80s Lakers with, of course, Magic, Kareem, James Worthy. The 80s Celtics, Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish. For a little while, Dennis Johnson. The 96 through 98 Bulls, they made that specific. The 08 Celtics, 2016 through 2019 Golden State Warriors. And let me ask you this. Who do you think would be a super team out of these two teams? The Lakers with Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, or the Brooklyn Nets with Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving? Which of those teams do you think would be a super team?
Both of them.
You think both of those are super teams?
You said Wilt Chamberlain, Elgin Baylor, and who else for the Lakers?
Jerry West.
Yeah, I consider that a super team.
Okay. So would you put that super team over that 2019 Brooklyn Nets?
The 2019 Brooklyn Nets of Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving?
Yeah.
I'll say no. On namesake, no.
You wouldn't put them. Okay, well, ChatGPT didn't put that Lakers team as a super team, but put that Brooklyn Net team as a super team. So I ask you this. If those teams are super teams, what are, I'm going to say, two things they have in common for the most part? Other than maybe Brooklyn, what do they have in common? And I don't
Which
have
team?
much time. So I'll tell you.
You're asking me between the Lakers and Brooklyn, like what do they
between
have in
all
common?
those teams? No, between all those super teams.
They have multiple all-stars, high-level players on the same team.
Okay. Well, that's not the answer I was looking for, but they all had great coaches. Red Auerbach, those 60 Celtics. Pat Riley eventually with the Showtime Lakers. Casey Jones, top 15 all-time Boston Celtics coach. Of course, Phil Jackson. Doc Rivers, it's up to your interpretation. But I think with that, you can. He's not a bad coach. I'll say that. He's not a bad coach. But then and of course Steve Kerr with the Warriors. But 2019, Nets with Steve Nash. We're going to. I don't know why they included that team, but we're going to take that off. My time is up, but I'm going to add 2 minutes. We were supposed to go 7 minutes, and this was the time went quick. So I'm going to continue with 2 more minutes. So with that said, ChatGPT says these teams usually have elite players that you would normally could build around on their own teams. They disrupt parity, and they're usually the number one team picked to win the championship that year. So most of these teams had that in some capacity, but I believe the 80s Celtics and Lakers, the parity was what it was going to be. We were going to have those teams, those Moses Malone, Dr. J, Sixers, maybe Ralph Sampson and those Houston Rockets. But most of the time with those teams, the Lakers and Boston were going to be in the spots they were. They were going to be in title contention. So super team or not, they didn't disrupt the parity, I don't think. They just had great teams. And then you have the elite superstar part of it, where would you build a team around Klay Thompson?
In his peak?
Yeah.
Yes. You can build a team
around. Would you build a team around Draymond Green?
No.
Okay. Would you build a team around Dennis Rodman?
No.
Okay. Would you build a team around Kevin McHale?
I'll say I'm gonna say no, but he's close. He's closer than the last two.
Okay. So that debunks that, because if ChatGPT is saying it's elite players who combined normally would be players you would build around, a lot of these teams aren't considered super teams because they would have maybe 2 players that you could consider elite, not three. So I'm going by y'all's definitions. So my time is up.
Well,
So yeah, I don't think I got what I wanted to because I had a lot more. But because 7 minutes isn't that long, I didn't get to half of the stuff. Um, so we're gonna move on to your round, and hopefully my round went better than it sounded. So I'm gonna
uh,
start your 7 minutes. You let me know when you're ready to start your 7 minutes.
okay. You can go ahead and start it. It's not going to take me 7 minutes to get mine off because you were basically making my
All right,
point for me. So I
all right,
appreciate
start it
that.
up.
So
Okay.
what the concept of super teams, and I'm not even sure when it really started. Like, because you have examples from back in the 90s, So just speaking from my perspective, since I'm the younger generation, I'm gonna just say this, right? When you had brought up the question about Kevin McHale, Dennis Rodman, Draymond Green, not building around them specifically, correct? Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's again, great teams. You've seen a lot of great teams in your day, your nice, long, lengthy span of basketball knowledge.
I've seen a lot of it. Yep.
And so you know that everybody has to shine in their role. So to make these super teams, yes, you will need pieces, big pieces, right? Let's take the Heat, for example, when they added
Mm-hmm.
LeBron and they added Bosh, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we know LeBron stands the test of time and you put him anywhere and he is elite wherever. So you add him to that Miami Heat team who was, I think, fifth in the Eastern Conference, probably 47. I think they were like 47, 35, something like that, right? And you add Bosh. And, and again, I'm going to ask you, like, would you build a team around Chris Bosh at that point in time?
In 2010,
Yes.
probably.
Okay. So that version of Bosh, you get that version of LeBron and that version of Dwayne Wade, who was elite. Put them all together. Everybody's immediate expectation for that team was what?
Championship.
Absolutely. Therefore, when you have those elite players, the expectation, regardless if it's right or wrong, is championship. That is when you know you have a super team. When you make moves that offseason that just negate all kind of basketball reality, where you don't just put pieces together and then immediately they're a champion, but it's the names of those players, their impact that then drive the narrative. This team, on paper, they should win a championship. You got LeBron James, you got Dwayne Wade, you got Chris Bosh. But just because you're a super team, that does not mean you have to win the championship. Your expectation will be championship. Again, right or wrong, but that is the expectation. So then when you tell me about the Kevin McHale and the Draymond Greens, no, you will not build around them by themselves. But you add the things that they are good at to a Kevin Durant on that 2017 Warriors team, to a Klay Thompson, who I said arguably is one of the best shooting guards ever when we did that tier list way back when.
Mm-hmm.
And you have Steph Curry, who's considered one of the best point guards. Some people think he's the best point guard of all time. Had all of those together, and you get, because there's only one ball, and you can't shoot like he's not going to average 30 and 15 on that team. He's going to play his role, set screens, run the offense. He's going to do all the things he has to do for this team to win a championship. But he does it at such an elite level. It's not fair, right? If I'm Kevin Durant, all I have to worry about is dropping 27. I really just have to play a secondary role on defense. I don't have to guard the best player. I'm free to just play my game. Again, it is not fair. And you got to, when you look at all the teams they're playing against, A to B, like I think I'd say the most toughest challenge they probably could have had would have been that Cleveland team. And they dismantled them against another super team with Kevin Love, LeBron
What,
James,
what, year,
Kyrie.
what year you talking about? Oh, it's your time. Never mind.
Yes, the first year.
Mhm.
Not the second year when they dismantled what was left of the Cavs, but the first year when everybody considered them on pretty equal footing. They destroyed that team, destroyed them. So again, you're saying they don't exist, but it doesn't make sense that how they wouldn't exist just because of that definition of that third guy not being able to showcase on this team what he would showcase on a team of like bottom feeders. Like, yeah, if you threw Chris Bosh on the Washington Wizards back then, yeah, he'd give you probably 25 and 12 or something like that on very solid efficiency. But on Miami, he didn't give you that because that wasn't his role. But you're asking him to be better than the Pacers' third best player. He can do that. He can outplay David West. He can outplay Roy Hibbert in such an amazing fashion that again that it wouldn't be close. Right? Miami got tested throughout the playoffs, but they were still the super team. They were still the team to beat. But that doesn't mean that they're not a super team because Chris Bosh didn't have superstar numbers. He had superstar impact. We already know what LeBron James did. We already know what D Wade did. But your problem is that third person not having the numbers, not being what they were on a different team. But what they bring to this team, like Miami, what Chris Bosh brought to Miami, the floor spacing, the defense, right? Allowing them to go small so that LeBron could play the four to attack those fours that were not strong enough, fast enough to contain him. It created so many disadvantages or advantages for that Miami Heat team and disadvantages for the other teams. That's the superstar impact. And that is why those teams were super teams. Draymond Green's impact. It's not all in the box score. When you watch the games, and I know you do, I'm not going to insult your intelligence and say you didn't watch the games because I know you did. I've watched some of them with you, right? So to say those teams aren't super teams is just discredit to the games that you watched, that we watched together at times.
Okay.
So that argument can't be the argument of why why those teams are not super teams because the third or fourth or whatever player didn't do what they typically do on different circumstances. And how much time I got left?
Yeah, 13 seconds.
All right. Then I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that.
So we're going to I know I keep changing rules up. I said this is a test run. So this is not how these are going to run. So but I say 10 minutes. I didn't get a lot of stuff I needed to say in that time. So I gotta do better on the next one. But I feel like, well, no, I'm gonna keep it the way it is. We're gonna keep it 7 minutes. But I'm gonna get my point across. Okay, so so that was your rebuttal, your thoughts on super teams. So we're going to start up the next 7 minutes, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so it started now. Let me ask you this: why wasn't the 2015 Golden State Warriors included in ChatGPT's assessment of super teams?
At that point of what, when it was Steph, Clay, and Dre?
2016 to 2019 was the window they gave for the Golden State Warriors to be a super team.
Well, 2016, they went 73-9, was considered the best team of all time, record-wise. And then obviously 2017, they had Kevin Durant. 2018, they still have Kevin Durant. So,
okay. But what negates 2015?
Because they showed that they were very beatable, and Draymond and Clay weren't those versions. Okay. But they weren't those versions in 2016. You just
ruined your whole. So, super team, you could only be a super team if, in revisionist history, you win.
No. Because the 2015 team, nobody thought they were a super team. They thought they were a really good team.
But weren't they pretty much the same team in 2015 as they were in 2016, maybe with a few changes?
I think you need to go back and look at what Steph was doing in 2016 compared to 2015.
No, I mean you can't put that caveat that what that player is doing that year it's the same team from 2015 to 2016. So it's dependent on how that player is playing, as if they're a super team or not.
They go from being a solid point guard to a unanimous MVP, the first and only
So it's
unanimous
dependent
MVP.
on the players and their progression that year. Now we didn't know that at the beginning of the season. So were they? So
Did
was the
you what
2016? Were the 2016 Golden State Warriors a super team at the beginning of 2016?
at the beginning? No, because nobody thought Steph was going to
Okay,
play
well
like
then
that.
how are they? How are they suddenly a super team? Because you can have revisionist history, go back and see what they did. So that's what creates a super team. Is if you can go back and see what they did, then you can say, hey, they were a super team.
They played at a superstar level at
So
that
why
in
weren't
that
they?
season. They played like that.
So why weren't they a super team at the beginning of 2016?
They they weren't considered a super team in the beginning because nobody projected them to play at that level in 2016.
So if they had the same personnel or close to the same personnel from 2015 to 2016, you could only call them a super team if certain players progress. That's when they're a super team.
They won
So you're saying it's
73
dependent
games.
on the growth of the players, not just putting these specific players together. Hmm?
Chat GPT is taking the entirety of the season, meaning in the beginning of the season, nobody projected them to win 73 games. They are considered that because they won 73 games, because the steps that all of those players took. Mind you, Steph Curry, unanimous MVP, Klay Thompson, multiple high-level performance games, Draymond Green, multiple high-level performance games. Like that was their big three. And they won 73 games because of it.
So then you're saying super teams are dependent on their season. So you're not going to call a team a super team at the beginning of the season. You got to wait to see what they do to be able to call them a super team.
You asked me specifically about the Warriors. That does not apply to every super team. Not every
Which super
super
team
team is
doesn't apply
formulated in the
to?
same fashion.
Which super
You
team
just asked
doesn't
me an
apply to?
isolated incident that only applies to this Golden State Warriors team
What about the '96 Bulls?
when they acquired
Dennis Rodman.
Dennis Rodman.
Do you feel
What
like they
about that?
were at the start of '96? They were a super team at that point.
Again, we're not
Hmm?
talking. We're like they acquired the best rebounder in basketball, put him on that team with Michael Jordan, with Scottie Pippen.
But Michael Jordan had just failed. They just came up short to a young Orlando Magic. Michael Jordan had failed.
But he
Dennis
was
Rodman had just gotten absolutely dominated by Hakeem Olajuwon with a David Robinson by his side, and most teams didn't even want to touch him back then. So when they picked up Dennis Rodman, were they a super team at that point?
so the things that you just said, you're highlighting that what they did by themselves, separate from each other. You're then talking
Okay.
about adding those entities together. Jordan coming off of retirement, not having his sea legs, then you're giving him the best rebounder in basketball statistically. Like what
Okay.
is
Well,
the
let me ask you
argument?
this. Let me ask you this. Even though we're going to negate ChatGPT for right now, do you feel the Boston Celtics in 2025, beginning of the season, was a super team?
No.
Okay.
No, they're not a super team. They're just a really good team. But they're not a super team.
Okay. Okay. So in 2016, you didn't think that the Golden State Warriors were a super team. I'm gonna go back to that.
At the beginning of the season, no.
Okay, so they were
No
the
one,
defending
nobody.
champion. They had these. I'm not gonna say the exact. I'd have to pull it up real quick, but they had most of the same members of that 2015 team,
Mhm.
and yet you call them a super team because of hindsight being 2020, knowing what they did that season. They became a super team, but it's not like they added any big players. It's not like 2017 where they added KD.
Mhm.
We're going back through revisionist history and saying they were a super team They couldn't be a super team in 2015 because they didn't have the 73-9 record. But
They beat an injured Cavs team. Literally, Kyrie was gone and Kevin Love went down in the first round. Nobody validated that championship.
You can't help that. They still won.
But then that doesn't mean they're a super team because they won and then they're
so
going into the next season.
So we can make our last statements because time is up. My last statement is this. We call super teams because we can look back on their time together and whatever when they won, when they created certain accolades, things of that nature, we look back on and say, yeah, that was a super team. But if a super teams exist, they have to exist from the moment they start to the moment throughout the entire season. You can't. The reason why I say you can't, super teams don't exist is because we have to look back on what they did to gather the information to say, yes, this was a super team. And that's all I have to say. That's the reason why I don't think they exist, because it's more of a revisionist thing than it is a real-time kind of event.
But that's a lie, because when I led my argument with the Miami Heat, because that is, I think, what a lot of people widely consider the beginning of super teams. Even though I disagree, you're bringing in from the fifth seed team in the Eastern Conference, who their main focal point was D Wade. You bring in LeBron, you bring in Chris Bosh. So at the beginning, when you're starting from the offseason, how is that not a super team when you add LeBron James, the MVP, and
one more
Chris
question?
Bosh?
Okay, and I have a question then. If they had never won a championship, would they still be considered a super team?
Yes, they'd be the super team that failed, just like that old school Lakers team when they had all those old raggedy pieces. They failed.
You consider that 2012 Lakers team a super team?
I don't consider it, but that's the public
you can't compare
perception.
them to. You can't say yes, Miami is, but no, the Lakers weren't, because
they're in their prime. That's a completely different argument, because that 2012 Lakers team, they weren't. Dwight was not in his prime. Steve Nash was old as dirt, and Kobe was old as dirt. That's not a super team. That's superstar names put together.
Okay, so there's an age limit to be.
But Miami, all those players were in their primes essentially. D Wade was maybe on the tail end of his prime. LeBron was peaking his prime. Bosh was still in his prime.
So you're saying there's one super team all time?
No, but I'm giving you an example of a super team
based
off your definition of preconceived.
So then again, why is 96 Bulls considered a super team if Dennis Rodman is 35 and past his prime?
I don't think they're considered a super team. They're just a really good team.
You don't think the 96 through 98 Bulls are a super team?
No, I don't think there's not on that. Like, you don't have, like I said, you don't have to be a super team to win a championship. Super teams can get beat if a better team, top to bottom, plays like 2011. Let's go back down revisionist history. The super team Miami Heat got embarrassed by the Dallas Mavericks. Was Dallas on paper, was Dallas better than them? No. They were on paper.
They overachieved by getting there. So, but that's not
Dallas.
No, some people say that Miami overachieved.
No, they should have been in the finals and they should have won, but they didn't, because a better team beat them. You could have all the star power in the world, but if they don't fit, if they don't gel, they're not going to win. That does not mean they are not a super team in that concept. You have three guys in their primes playing together who would be MVP caliber players on separate teams. You put them together, and the expectation is championship.
Absolutely. Isn't any move a team makes geared towards championships, though?
It should be, unless they're rebuilding.
Okay, so they just had the luck of the draw to get two guys in their prime, even though we won't get into this too much, but a lot of people complain that Dwayne Wade was getting old Bosch wasn't giving you what you thought you would get when he came to Miami.
Reduced role.
So, and the fact that a super team went 2-2 against two older teams, matter of fact. But you say they're just a better team. So
Yeah.
super teams don't have to be the best team. They're just that arbitrary definition that if you got these three elite players, you're a super team. So that's kind of
Yes.
what you say.
Yes, when you have, by that definition, when you have at least three superstars, Bosch, Wade, LeBron.
But there's no definitive definition, so it's up to your interpretation. There's no because this is going by what we think a super team should be.
It is old as time. That is if you were to ask a random Joe Schmo off the street, what is a super team? They're going to give you some form of definition of three overstacked, talented players on the same team trying to stack the deck to win a championship. That doesn't mean that that team is going to win. You can still get outcoached. You can still get outplayed. Injuries can happen. Like, just because you are a super team, that does not mean you win a championship. But you are still a super team, and your expectation is to win a championship. Otherwise, why would you get all those players, put them on the same team, and be like, no, we want to lose in the first round. We want to get swept. That doesn't make any sense.
So why do you not consider teams that by that very definition are super teams, but you don't feel they are super teams because this guy's age or that guy's age? Why that? So they have to be a specific age. They have to be in their primes, but nobody really knows when a player's prime might be. You might have a drop off after your fifth, sixth season. So is it what they were prior to coming to this team? If they were in their prime and they come to this team, but they underperformed, it's still a super team because when they came in, they were in their prime.
Okay. Because I might need to slow this down a little bit for you. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
When you talk about the 96 Bulls and the acquisition of Dennis Rodman, old as he was, the Bulls needed him for his toughness, his rebound, and his defensive versatility. All right.
Okay.
Things that they were not getting. You got one of the best players to do that for you. That's his only job.
Okay.
To be that. And he can do that better than anybody. So now that you've addressed your concern, you still have the best player in Michael Jordan. You still have one of the best two-way players, Scottie Pippen.
Okay.
And like you brought up coaching, you still got Phil Jackson, who is arguably the greatest coach ever. So you're adding him to that, right?
Okay.
I'm not saying by that definition that makes them a super team, but that's the other side of the argument of why some people consider the 96 Bulls a super team, because you're adding that to an already well-oiled machine. Bring up the 2017 Warriors, 73-9 Golden State Warriors, to a Steph, to a Klay, to a Draymond. You're adding arguably the second best player in basketball, Kevin Durant, to your team, to an already well-oiled machine. That team, you just added Kevin Durant. That team, super team. You got top 3 shooting guard, Klay Thompson, probably top 3 point guard, and Steph Curry, maybe even arguably the best point guard at that point in time in the season. And then the only person better than Kevin Durant at that point was LeBron James. That's it. 3 guys who could stand on their own. Klay, KD, Steph. Could put them in a different situation, and they'll give you even bigger numbers and be in MVP discussions.
Okay.
So how is that not a super team when you're adding a caliber player of Kevin Durant in his prime
Okay. I'm listening.
to that 73-9 win team, which is the greatest team statistically of all time? How is that not considered a super team? Is the question I want to ask you.
Okay. And if we're going to go by your definition and what ChatGPT gave us, I'll say, okay. You can kind of create the narrative that that was a super team. But hear me out. Does super teams have the caveat of needing a solid system and a solid coach? I just want to ask that. Or
They
does
don't
it doesn't matter?
I don't think I don't think it matters in the concept of like, hey, do you consider this a super team? Now, the success of said super team, those two things definitely, the system and the coaching definitely play a part because those are the teams that actually win.
Okay. So in your mind, a super team could, you know, our niece could go out there and be the coach and they would still win no matter what.
Like they will be a super team on paper. That does not mean they will win a championship. Like
Okay.
you said,
But if they don't win
coaching
a
and
championship, if they don't even make it to the playoff, are they still a super team?
yeah,
Okay. So just on paper.
expectations. You can
Okay.
still underperform expectations and still be a super team. Yes.
Okay. So you're saying is as long as they met that criteria on paper, they're a super team.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean they're a super team with the results as being considered a super team just by the very definition and fitting those pieces into that they're a super team.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, I can't argue with that. But
That is my whole point. Like you can have a super team and you guys can get absolutely obliterated in the playoffs. And then what you do is then retool, find pieces, those other guys that fit around your three stars. 2011, they did not win because they didn't have complementary pieces. And LeBron James, he didn't perform.
I still ask why. I mean, and that's just ChatGPT's interpretation. I don't know why I'm going back to that, but even you said 2015 wasn't a super team on paper.
No.
Or 2016 to start the season was not a super team on paper, but they got on the paper once they got the 7-3-9 wins. Didn't get the championship, but once they did all of those things and Steph was unanimous MVP, you could put them back on paper. You couldn't put them on paper before then.
Chat GPT said 2016. In my argument, I said 2017 and obviously 2018 because they still had the same pieces. But 2016, I'm just making.
2019 wasn't a super team.
You said which one?
2019.
When they still had their big three in 2019.
Yeah.
They just lost because they were injured.
So what? So was 2019 a super team? Because you said 2017 and 2018 definitely.
Yeah, 2019 was a super team. The only reason why people or Chat GPT in that case, because they didn't get the job done and they got injured in the finals, but everybody was going to pick them.
Yeah, I mean that's what it said. 2016 to 2019, Golden State was a super team.
Yeah, they were still a super team.
So 2019, they were still a super team, even with the results. So
correct.
With all this said, because we went way longer, but debaters from here on out, we're going to have to keep it within the confines of the time. But just this is our little test run. So anyway, so you think that it's just like I said, it's just based on who you have and I guess what you do throughout the season, or in 2016 case, it had to be that. Between 2017, 2018, 2019, it was just they were they were a super team on paper.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave it at that because I disagree. I think that so many teams could be considered by that definition a super team, but we disqualify them for whatever reason because of the outcome of what we were able to see. So I just think that it's something that it's a idea, it's a concept, and it's a great buzzword to use when you're describing who LeBron beat or who Michael Jordan didn't beat, who this team beat, who that team beat. It's easy to use super team and just kind of gloss it over because we know what they did, what they had, and how everything, all the results came about. So my argument is just that I think it's too vague of a standard to really, I think, hold any ground as a true measurement of a team or franchise. But that's just me. So with that said, hopefully you guys will put up a poll right after we've done with this, and we will ask who you think won, and whoever what the result is what the result is. Do you think super teams existed or do you not? In my case, I don't. BigNige thinks they do exist. So
Definitely
let us
did.
know.
Definitely
Let us
exists.
know who you thought presented a better argument. And once again, please like and subscribe. Please, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, we're going to have some different uh, content creators on here coming up soon that will be getting just as spicy with it. We're going to do some player versus players and team versus team. Hopefully, some more ideology stuff, more concepts, basketball things, theories, if you will, and just some interesting things to do during the summer months where the news cycle isn't as big. Of course, the NBA is over, so it's kind of hard to find topics to really delve into other than theories and hypotheticals. So we're just going to debate some, and hopefully, you guys will enjoy. So, with that said, BigNige, any parting words? Anything you have to say?
I hope y'all enjoyed the debate. Just to reiterate my point, I do believe super teams exist. They've existed. Maybe the CBA might have done away with super teams because it's going to be hard to have three max level players on the same roster without killing your salary cap. But nonetheless, I do believe that super teams existed in the NBA by that metric. They don't have to
Okay.
win, but they did exist. So I hope you guys enjoyed the debate. Comment down below who you thought won this debate. Do you believe super teams existed? Do you are you like CW and you think super teams just never existed? You don't think by that metric they ever existed? Or do you agree with me and you believe that super teams were a part of NBA history and they have existed?
Oops. Hey, well,
And
perfectly
so,
said. And since
yep.
he, since you got your last point in, uh, off of what you said earlier, super teams do exist on paper. Let's just put it like that. They exist on paper, but
Yeah.
there's no guarantee they exist on the court. So we're gonna leave it at that.
No.
Hopefully, you guys, like I said again, enjoyed, and we'll be back soon. Hopefully this week and the following weeks with some more content. And that's it for today. Appreciate you guys.
Peace.